Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for Citybiz List, and welcome to our program today. And today we continue with another of our discussions under the auspices of the Bridge Alliance, which we call Repairing America's Broken Democracy. And toward that end, our guest is also trying to do that. And he is Rabbi Charles Savenor, and he is the executive director of an organization called Civic Spirit. Rabbi, welcome to our program today. How are you?
It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
It's our pleasure. So let me begin, and I know you said I could call you Charles, so I will do that. Every now and then I meet a rabbi and they ask me to call them also by their first name, so I'm happy to oblige. But I might go back and forth. You never know. Charles, Executive Director of Civic Spirit, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about Civic Spirit and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So I've been asked a lot about how did you as a rabbi end up at Civic Spirit? And in some ways, it goes back to my upbringing. I grew up in the Boston area. And to grow up in Massachusetts and Boston is to really walk through history quite frequently. The city has markers from, the Revolutionary War and all different parts of American history. As a matter of fact, it's true. When anybody visited us from out of town when I was a kid, my father had to take them to the USS Constitution. He loved Old Ironsides. He just thought it was a beautiful symbol of, the strength of America and that, the struggles we needed to overcome in order to be who we want to be. Mm-hmm. So there are really two passions for me in my learning. And one of those growing up was American history. And the other part was really my faith. Jewish history is and the Jewish experience is one that's really filled with hope. And I was always intrigued, amazed, and inspired that despite obstacles that faced the Jewish people over history, we found a way to not just survive, but to live and to thrive as well. So going to rabbinical school is something that I wanted to do since I was around, 12. It wasn't the most popular thing when you're 12.
Probably not.
But it's something that I really wanted to do. And I followed that. I followed that dream, and I've worked in a variety of settings, mainly in the congregational world. And I found it really fulfilling. I love to teach. I really love to build community. A few years ago when COVID began, I began to think about what's next. And really what's next began with, the world. And then it, came to America. And then it came New York City where I live. And then it was our family. And then I said, what about me? What do I want to do? And I was really happy and fulfilled in the synagogue position that I had. But what was really keeping me up at night, besides, what was going on with the pandemic, was what was happening in our society. And I said, if an opportunity came up where, to be involved in civic engagement, to hopefully move the needle in a positive way, I would really embrace that. And that's when I heard about Civic Spirit, which is a multi-faith, nonpartisan, a multi-faith, nonpartisan organization with the mission of fostering civic education in faith-based schools. We provide training with the goals of civic belonging, civic skills, and democratic fluency.
Wow. So let's go through those goals, if you would. And how did Civic Spirit get started? You weren't there for that piece of it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, but I wish I had been in the room, because the founders of our organization had the vision that something had to be done. And so it really, the genesis, the origin story of our organization was after the 2016 presidential election. Our founders were concerned about the civic dialogue that was taking place in our country, right? How did we get to this point, and what could we do? And so they gathered together civic leaders, thought leaders, members of the clergy, academics, as well as other philanthropists, and said, what can we do to make things better? And they identified that in faith-based schools in the United States, that's Jewish, Catholic, Christian, Quaker, Islamic, there's no requirement for civic education. And so, yeah, it's most private schools conduct themselves, according to their own standards, and there's no requirement for civic education. Well, you'd say, well, isn't American history civic education? No, it's not. Civic education is this nexus between our history, American history in this case, and how the government works. And in this case, that knowledge of how our country has developed, as well as how the government is supposed to function as a democracy, is something that we discovered wasn't getting the attention it deserved or needs in faith-based schools, and to be quite honest with you, in the public school system as well.
So, but nevertheless, you deal primarily with the faith-based schools, and so in order to promote more civic education, do you develop a curriculum? Are you proponents with the heads of schools all over the country? How do you move your objectives forward?
Wow, David, you're asking all the right questions. I really appreciate that. So we've been asked to write a curriculum, and we have a different approach. Anyone in education or in leadership knows how many curricula they received, or strategic plans have been created that just end up on the shelf, right? So we've taken the approach of train the trainer. We work primarily with school leaders and faculty in the approach of civic education, of how do we read documents, our foundational text of America, right? Which are not, by the way, are not just the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. It's legislation, key legislations over our nearly 250 years are documents that inform us of who we are. So that's one approach, because we have a three-pronged approach of democratic fluency, civic belonging, and civic skills. Part of what we need to do is to provide training for faculty and educational leaders in dialogue across difference, as well as collaboration across difference. And in the world that we're living in today of social media and a lot of conversations taking place Facebook to Facebook rather than face to face, the training that we provide in intentional listening and understanding has been very, very well received. Civic skills are not just about voting or serving on a jury, right? Or running for office. It's also about, how do you work with your neighbor? How do you create community? How do you work towards common goals? And the other thing, which is really important, that we emphasize, is, in what world is there ever one opinion? Right? We say in our faith, in the Jewish tradition, there are two Jews, three opinions.
Right.
But most of the time, there are more than three opinions. So part of also what we do is in part of our skills workshop is how to create a milieu in a classroom, in a town hall, in a synagogue, a church, a mosque, whatever the case may be, where we can agree to disagree agreeably, but also agree that what comes next belongs to all of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, the agreeing to disagree part, and doing so in a pleasant way, it seems certainly to be something that's been missing for a while in many of our dialogues. Charles, you mentioned your. It's number one, again, fantastic work you're doing, and it does seem to me. I mean, you can't do it. You can't do everything, but it does seem to me that that the kind of civic education you're speaking of is missing from many public schools as well. This is not something restricted to faith-based schools. So, given the fact that your organization, I think, is about 5 years old, Civic Spirit, and what are your? Let me ask you, what are your plans for the future, and how do you continue to advance your mission, or change or change your mission, or adjust it as needed?
So, great question. We've been primarily in schools, and we're spending time on evaluating the impact of our trainings and our approach. Right? If a teacher inspires a student, but that inspiration isn't shared to the larger school community, is not brought home to the kitchen table, or is not brought home to the larger community, did it really happen?
Right.
So we're looking for ways to say, how can we leverage the good work that's being done, the impactful education that's being imparted, so that it goes beyond just one classroom, that it affects a school, that it impacts a community, and that's part of our plan. One of the ways that we're looking to grow and expand is to start working with educators and experiential education, also called informal education, with summer camp and youth movements, co-curricular activities. Before COVID, when we started, we had a program that was called Civic Spirit Day that brought together 10 different schools from New York City of different faiths and gave them a democratic design challenge. I think the design challenge was, if there's an intersection in your town or city where there's a lot of accidents, but there's no traffic light, how do you get a traffic light put in? Sounds simple, doesn't it? It's not so simple.
No.
It's how government works. It's how we care. It's how we look out for one another. So, one of the things you asked earlier that I just want to swing back to is, who do we work with, and how do we expand our reach? We began here in the Northeast, really the Amtrak, a corridor, and we're now working with schools in the Midwest and several on the West Coast. Really, it's been word of mouth. We advertise, or we promote what we do through social media, through newspaper articles, through editorials and whatnot. But we really, we've had real success with, educational leaders hearing about what we do and being relieved by several things. One of which is we're nonpartisan, right? Like we care that foundational texts get taught, and it's immaterial to us what conclusion that the conclusion people come to. We want it to be meaningful to them. We
Right.
want them to understand whatever conclusion they come to. There might be someone who feels the exact opposite way, but they can still work together. So in this way, what's been happening because of the success of my what do you call it, predecessors and the great work that they began, that communities, even public school systems, camps, have been reaching out to us and say, we need help. Like it's not just the kids who can't talk to each other anymore.
Right.
Parents don't talk to each other.
Right.
Right. The parking lot conversations aren't necessarily arguments anymore after meetings. It's only people talking to their groups. Can Civic Spirit help? Which has really been a motivator for us to talk about how we need to expand, because the training that we do, which is primarily school focused, we believe can have a huge impact in the informal setting, not in the informal experiential setting, and for learners of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
This type of skill set, the democratic mindset, this muscle group of democracy is one that if you don't use it often enough, it begins to atrophy. We literally forget how to interact with one another. So we're looking in a broader sense of using the organization Civic Spirit to create civic spirit across America.
Well, good for you. And we certainly seem to be approaching that line in the sand, if you will, where we've forgotten how to interact properly. Rabbi, just like 1 minute left. How do our viewers reach you? How can they get involved, if possible, in your organization? And I guess based on what they've heard, you might have viewers who want to see if you can come to their communities and get into their schools. So what should one do to make that happen?
Civicspirit.org.
Civicspirit.org.
You can find us there. We're getting more inquiries and requests right now than we ever imagined. But thankfully, we have supporters who want to see us expand, increase our depth and breadth of what we do, and who we work with. So if you want to reach me, you can reach me at charlie@civicspirit.org. We're really we're looking for partners. Honestly, as important it is for people to reach out because either they want to support our efforts or they want to work with us. If viewers want to help, they can also recommend schools that they think we could work with and make an introduction. That would also help in incredible ways.
Well, Rabbi Charlie Savenor, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with Civic Spirit. No doubt some of our viewers will reach out to you, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure speaking with you, and I really commend you for making these type of conversations available.
You're very kind. Thank you. This has been David Nevins for Citybiz List, and another of our conversations on behalf of the Bridge Alliance, which we call Repairing America's Broken Democracy. Thank you for watching today.